As we continue with this story, I'm joined by Associate Professor at the Northwest University, Professor Barry Hanyane. Prof, good evening and thank you for your time tonight. The EFF Q&A, or at least the Julius Malema Q&A today, an interesting political exercise, but the fact that he was willing to embark on this political exercise does say that he does give some consideration to this dark cloud of corruption that hangs around him. Prof?
Hi, good evening. Good evening to yourselves, good evening to your viewers. I'm not sure if you can hear me now.
I can hear you now. My question is the fact that he did decide to embark on this political program where he called journalists for a Q&A does, in a sense, indicate that he is concerned about this dark cloud of corruption that has been with him for a while now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The question further that could be asked is, does he have the ability to separate his position and sense of political demeanor, if I may use that pun very carefully, against that of the EFF? So in short, is Malema the EFF and is EFF Malema? This question is definitely at the center of the whole argument. Whether today's press conference brought with it that ability to separate the two, I don't think over a long run it will actually give us a clear sense that he has the ability to shrug off all these allegations. And some of them are so deep-rooted as far back as his own position when he was still in the ANC Youth League, and this continues to follow him in the EFF. So in essence, I don't think that the EFF, and in this instance, the person himself in the form of Mr. Malema, will then shrug it off altogether.
Is it a preempt, a pre-strike, of course, following the arrest of those 8 officials linked to the collapse of the VBS Bank, in a sense, for him to strike before any of those allegations, I suppose, are investigated by the police?
Well, look, the Thabo Mdluli report made it quite easy for the police, for the curator as well included, to actually follow the money. And I think that trail itself has a lot to offer. The 8 persons who were attached to VBS have already been presented before court. We hear this morning that the former CFO of Mirafong has also been visited by the law enforcement agency. So gradually, I think there will be a leeway and a headway to touch those that we never thought are necessarily linked to the highs and the debacle itself. I mean, the saying goes, the arm of the law is longer. We have to keep watching this space.
His utterance of, I will resign if I am found to have been involved in any wrongdoing with this VBS matter. I mean, must we read much into it?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think what we can do for now is to perhaps ask ourselves certain questions. Could there be some kind of a clandestine network that is operating in order to shield certain prominent political figures and thereby creating a space for so-called fall guys who could very well include the 8 prominent former VBS officials, some government officials, predominantly in most municipalities. Already we've seen victims coming from, so-called victims, coming from Limpopo provincial ANC leadership. 3 officials there being suspended and being fingered out as co-conspirators and collaborators in the debacle.
Now, of course, the other issue is the on-point question where, I mean, for years now, he's literally being linked with the collapse of a whole entire province that had gone bankrupt, still maintaining his innocence.
Well, I think he's actually exploiting the space that no conviction was set there. So being a politician, this then allows him to come up and say, I dare you to actually prove that my fingers are dirty in this instance. And I'm not too sure whether there is evidence that cannot necessarily be presented before court and therefore putting him under trial, or indeed Mr. Malema is innocent from all these allegations. But then what is worrying is that certain persons closer to his proximity may very well be fingered. Let's not forget that very late last year, this investigation has somewhat been resumed by the NPA. So once again, the arm of the law will have to determine his fate and the fate of those who are closer to him.
So do all these things, and the fact that up until this point there is no court of law that has found him guilty, SARS has also not found him guilty, does it lend weight then to his assertion that there is a political smear campaign against him that does not want to see him, I suppose, running this country at some point?
Now, it's easier said than done. What we need to look at is to what degree are those who are closer to him implicated in some of these allegations. One can take a simple case like the one that's set at the Gauteng High Court in Tshwane, where the verdict was that certain members of the EFF may have benefited in the fuel tender. So it is such cases, the more we see them, that perhaps the arm of justice may very well come closer to the leadership of the EFF. And once again, it's not necessarily about him. The EFF brand here is at stake, and at stake firstly by the public opinion courts, as well as, of course, the attitude and the approach of law enforcement.
Well, one would say there is also a bit of a continuation of this war that we constantly see between Julius Malema, the EFF, and the Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan.
No, it won't stop. I don't think it will stop now. Perhaps we're likely to see a seizure of this as and when Pravin perhaps leaves cabinet. I don't see that stopping. Of course, it fits into the narrative that this may be used as a yardstick to deflate attention from real core issues that the party is struggling with. And one cannot run away from the reality that the results in the last conference of the party may very well reflect those who are willing to take the bullet, so to speak, for the party, and those who are questioning the intra-party ethical stance, which, of course, in some instances is personified in the politics of Mr. Malema himself.
What is your take out? I mean, looking at reaction on Twitter tonight to this, particularly to the supporters of Julius Malema, their takeout is that Julius Malema subjected himself to interrogation by some of the prominent journalists in the country. He stood his ground, and he came out smelling like roses.
Yeah, that's political public relations. I think it will be dangerous to read too much into that and actually use that to exonerate any form of allegations. Rightly so, it's important we give space to public scrutiny, and in this instance, in a form of law enforcement, yourselves as journalists who may very well have in your possession certain evidence that may be presented before any investigative agency and even a court of law. So I wouldn't read too much into today's event. It's more of political PR. The nitty-gritty, the gist of the issue lies in evidence that may be used against him or his party in the near future.
Professor Hanyane, I appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us tonight.